Liquorland are proud partners of the AskPiesNation podcast for another season of footy. Footy's back and Liquorland have all your drinks for when the siren calls. Have been great sponsors of ours, Jack, in the last year. Great to have them on board again.
Absolutely, Nico. With Ramon just around the corner, I'm sure there'll be a few nerves come the first siren on Friday night. So get yourself down to Liquorland and get yourself a nice beverage to relax those nerves.
Spot on, Jack. Pop into your local Liquorland today or shop online for all your favourites. Liquorland, from the land you love. Please drink responsibly. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the AskPiesNation podcast, where the pies are hot and the drinks are cold. I'm Nicholas Sacco, your host for this week's episode. We're episode 2 of season 5, or episode 115 if you're counting from the beginning. We're just days away from our opening round clash with the Cats, and there's so much buzz around. It's amazing to see. We've got another big show coming your way. Whether you're watching or listening, we preview the season at hand by giving our predictions from the Copeland winner to our final ladder position and everything in between. We indulge in the hype that you, the fans, are bringing to the table with another big Ask Pies Nation. Some great discussion points to be had on this week's episode. We preview what to expect from us each Thursday night as the teams drop. And it's just another way to get the fans involved in the discussion. So let's get underway again with the help of two of our regulars here on the AskPiesNation podcast, Marcus Callahan, Jack Dugan. Boys, I think our fans have taken to the video concept pretty well. Over 100 subscribers already on YouTube, so be sure to keep subscribing and so you don't miss a moment of the AskPiesNation podcast in video form. Plus, we managed to get some people talking about Tark and Lockyer last week because I think that's a pretty good success in itself.
Tarks
Yes.
back for a week on Collingwood social media, so I was very impressed with that. Nico, did we have any family members who are happy with how you fronted up for the first show?
Pretty good. I even, cousins messaging in and letting us all know that, we're doing a good job here. So, we'll take any praise we can get. Better than the negative comments, that's for sure. But no, I think everyone took to the video concept pretty well, Jack.
Yeah, it's an interesting one for sure, Nico. No doubt it's going to blow up over the course of the season. But just saying off air before, Marcus, about how strange it is. I never thought that my head would be a thumbnail on YouTube, and sure enough, there it was in bright lights. But no, it's a good thing. Good thing, I think, for the podcast, and yeah, hopefully it means we can reach more people and get more engagement going. So
I hope that people get used to it because we're here to stay, whether you like it or not. So if you enjoy our melons, this is the place for you. AskPiesNation YouTube, get involved. All right, let's get straight into episode 2 for season 5. And before we get into some big season predictions, we'll just head around the club, see what's been going on in the last week or so. And I guess the first thing that came to mind for everybody was this Port Adelaide situation. We've finally had a negotiation with Port Adelaide and Koshy. I don't think I've ever seen him this happy before. But we're finally going to let them wear their prison bar jumper for their round 3 clash against the Crows in their upcoming showdown. It's the only time throughout the year we're going to let them wear it. And funnily enough, we'll be playing them the week before at the mighty MCG. So it should be fascinating all around. I know Lukey had some comments on it as well. He tweeted about it when the issue came out, and he said it was a mature decision. He was just happy that it had been sorted and we don't have to hear to talk for another year. But I want to get your opinion, Marcus and Jack. Have we gave in? Are we as a club, just relenting our strength and saying, fine, we'll let you have whatever you want? Or is this just a fact that we want to stop the talk, move on, it doesn't go any further than this, and that's the end of it?
Yeah, it's one of those issues, if I could even call it that, that's gotten way too much airtime over there for my liking. So I'm not sure what was said over the phone, apparently.
Yeah, very casual.
Jack's got the insight.
Oh, yeah, it was on the radio today. They were talking about, apparently it wasn't an official conversation. It was just they happened to brought it up over a phone call with Jeff Brown and Koshy. So, yeah, I think, as you were just about to say, Marcus, it's an issue. It's a non-issue, really. It's one of those things that I think not a lot of people are really that invested in, and it's got, way too much airtime over probably the last almost 3 or 4 years now. A
and
bit
the
ridiculous.
rest. Feel like a bit of a Channel 7 v Channel 9 feud between Press Red for Ed and D Kosh. But if we can move on from that, then that would be nice. I think that it's one less. We make enough headlines throughout the season, Collingwood, regardless of how we're going. So if we can just put that on the back burner, let the Port Adelaide Power, not the Port Adelaide Magpies, wear their prison bars Guernsey. Is it just for that game?
Apparently so. You'll be only that home showdown clash they have against the Crows.
Okay, good luck to them, and we'll beat them the week before. That's
Yeah,
all that really
very
matters.
That's
nice.
all that matters. But speaking of headlines, there were some great feature pieces with some Collingwood personnel over the last few days. One being Graham Wright, the other being Craig McRae. And I found them pretty fascinating. So I want to go through a couple of things that was brought up in both articles before we continue. The one with Graham Wright was very fascinating because you got to remember he came into the club at a time there was a lot of turmoil on the field to start with. We were playing pretty poor football in 2021, and then off the field as well with recovering from the big trades that had happened in the 2020 off season. Bucks's position, his contract was expiring. This ended up being Eddie's last year in the job as well as president. So there was a lot going on, and he had some very interesting quotes about the fact that almost every day he was coming here shaking his head, thinking what's going on at the club. The club, of course, he was a premiership star of back in his playing days. So it was pretty fascinating to see. But the one thing I did find very interesting was the game style, and he was interviewed by Glenn McFarlane and our very own Mickey McGuan, who we know has a fantastic insight in all things Collingwood. So he was one of the interviewers, as I should say, and brought up the game style and, talked about how the game sort of changes every month according to Graham Wright. And yes, we're still trying to go fast and direct. And even though there's some personnel change, he feels like it's going to be a similar game style again in 2023, which I guess makes sense. But I guess the thing is a lot of clubs are starting to, what am I trying to say? A lot of clubs are sort of, stealing bits and pieces and they're starting to put them in their own game plan. So, whether it's sustainable, I think is a question that will come into the 2023 season, and whether it's something that Collingwood can still use to try and get ahead of their opponents on game day. I'm interested in your thoughts, boys.
So you're referring to our attacking brand? Is that
that's right, yeah.
what we're talking
More direct,
about
less
here?
possession, go forward.
Yeah, I think that the obvious call here is that the rules around the game are naturally trying to suit faster play, with the game being in disarray, 3 or 4 years ago, particular, where it was just very stagnant and the players were really struggling to move the ball. The scores were lower than they had been in previous seasons. So building off what I said last week, I think that we will continue to try and do what other teams are doing who are legitimate candidates for the flag, and that is hitting that 45 kick off the halfback flank and just kind of putting the ball into space such that other players can mop it up. I get not in the corridor, but in parts of the ground that aren't traditionally gone towards, because there's such a high risk with a deliberate out of bounds now when you're coming out of defence. So I think that the teams that are going to continue that attacking brand are really going to be the ones that others follow. And obviously Geelong, Richmond, I think still very dangerous. The Pies, of course, will be the types to do that. As for our defensive style, I think, as I said last week, that's the bit that really intrigues me as to how we defend off a turnover. We are getting better at that, but we still do end up having close games because we invite the team back based on the higher risk style game that we play. So we want to see that as fans continue, obviously, Jack, but it's really something that we'll have to keep a close eye on over the first half of the season.
Yeah, couldn't agree more, Marcus. You touched on it just briefly then, but if you look at the last sort of recent premiers over the last 5 years or so, Richmond, Melbourne come to note, the biggest change that they made from their previous game style before they went on to win their flags was that they went quickly and they played more attacking. But what people can often forget is that really does come from having a really solid defense. This is not a Melbourne podcast, so we won't try and pump Melbourne's tyres up too much. But, Stephen May, Jake Lever, and a really solid back six. And that's where they can, when they're being hurt on turnover, is where they're really, really solid. So that's for mine, that's the next step for us, is that we're happy with the way we're going forward with the ball now, which is something that we were quite frustrated with for probably a good 10 years. But now we just need to focus on tidying up the back half of the ground, and when we do get into the position where we're forced to defend quickly, and how we stack up in that, it's going to be huge to watch over the course of this year.
It's a good segue to the comments he made as well about Darcy Moore taking over as captain. Had some praised him pretty much for taking on the role and the fact that, he's a spokesperson on and off the field, and, went to insights about, his recommendations when the Do Better report came out, and the fact that he was one of those players that led from the front in that charge, and that was already a sign that, he was going to be capable to do it on field as well as off. And he's socially aware. He's someone that understands the game and understands the bigger picture, which is, great to hear from your football manager. As a captain coming into the hold, he said there's still things to work on his leadership, which, I'm sure he'll develop as time goes on. But just more praise that Moore's the right man to take us forward, Marcus.
He is, and I think the big part of his leadership gap at the moment will be how he really embodies and channels his aggression when he's on the park. I think Darcy is a nice guy. He's no Luke Hodge. He's no Joel Selwood. He's not going to get under the opposition's skin. But to that point, I think that there is a real opportunity for him to champion that defence and not only make it a budding defence of the competition, but the benchmark defence in the competition over the next year or two. And with the players that we have coming through, there's no reason why that can't occur. Darcy Moore's probably in the peak of his powers at the moment on a lot of grounds, and particularly his health. I can't remember a stretch of his career where he's missed such little footy, touch wood.
Yeah, I was going to say, get that wooden touch.
Yeah, touch wood. So that's huge, but I think in order for his leadership to take on that next step in the right direction, he's really going to have to get a bit of grunt into him. And what I mean by that is be the player you are. You don't need to change your style, but your teammates look to you for that source of inspiration, not only from your streaks off the half-back flank, but also, exerting your presence. And he's a big guy as well. So I really hope that is something that he can add. Jacko, anything from you in terms of Darcy and where his leadership may or
not too much, to be perfectly honest with you, gents. You've summed it up quite brilliantly there. But just on his game style, I think I just don't want to see Darcy, for whatever reason, go inside his shell at all.
Yep.
I think he's an extremely important pillar to start our attack from that defensive line. So I would hate to see a world in which Darcy Moore sort of goes a bit more conservative, because, as I said, a lot of our ball use going forward starts with that really aggressive kick, or the time where Darcy leaves his man to take an intercept mark and kick up the wing. And I don't think he would, but I would hope that the captaincy wouldn't bring on a conservatism.
100% agree. Don't change a thing in your playing style. But what I'm talking about is it's Anzac Day. It's the third quarter. There's 5 minutes to go in it, and a player one of our defenders gets dropped. You want to see Darcy Moore going over there and flying the flag, because players will be looking to him to do that. Scotty Pendlebury had a different way, in my opinion, of getting under the opponent's skin. He's very good on the lip, always has been, and he could, I guess, exert some sort of mental effects on the opposition by getting into their ear, while also obviously flying the flag. But just want to make sure that Darcy's leading from the front in that regard. Don't get rubbed out, but do be there.
Yeah.
It'll be fascinating to see that style that he has in his leadership, particularly in those early rounds. I think, we've got some difficult opposition coming up, and, there might be some moments in games where the pressure's hot, both in a game point of view and maybe his own performance. So it'll be great to see what he takes from that experience. The other article I was mentioning just earlier before was one on Craig McRae that was done a few days ago, and, a lot of similar things were said between that one and the Graham Wright piece. But one real important paragraph that really stood out for me was the recruitment of Dan McStay. Now, of course, there was a lot of commentary about that coming into the season, whether he was the right man to take us forward in that forward 50. We haven't had a forward since Travis Cloke. How many times have we heard that story? So, there was already pressure on him before he had even put on a jumper. So that was the commentary around it. But one thing we got to remember about Dan McStay was that he wasn't the main man at Brisbane. He had Joe Danaher and Eric Kipwood, who were your two key targets in that area. And yes, there were times that McStay would impact the contest, but he was always playing third fiddle. And they recalled a situation at training pretty early on where, McStay was a bit hesitant to go for the footy, depending on what, personnel was around him. And, McRae stood to him and said, "It's your ball, Dan. You're the one that needs to take charge, and it's yours." And McStay was still a bit frazzled, because he's thinking, all right, well, this is my forward line now. I'm going to be the one where the midfielders will be kicking it to more often than not. And as it says in the article, was sort of a penny drop moment for McStay. He wasn't that third wheel, and it's why maybe McRae's the perfect person to get him on this road to say, you're at Collingwood now. You're not just in the back corner playing for Brisbane and getting the ball every 25, 30 minutes. You're going to be the man we go to every single time. And I think that was a very fascinating point made by that article. So hopefully that means we get to see a bit more of McStay playing the way he can and taking big marks and kicking big goals.
Yeah, and he's going to take the number one defender more often than not as well. So that's going to be a huge change for him. I think that if we get to the end of this season and Dan McStay isn't our number one target inside 50, there's a bit of disappointment there in terms of him taking that mantle on and really grabbing this opportunity by the horns. He's probably earning a few more dollars than old Checkers. So with that comes a bit of responsibility too, Jacko. But do you think he's got what it takes to take that next step?
Yeah, I do. I think just Nico spoke on opportunity and playing that third fiddle role in that team up in Brisbane is I think he's going to relish in it. And I think it's obviously taken him a little bit to get used to that. But now that he knows that he has the reassurance that he is the top dog, the main guy that we're going to be going to every time, that in itself could be absolutely huge for just his mental approach to the game. And it's going to be really interesting to watch it fold out. As we said last week, it's not just going to be interesting for Dan McStay, it's going to be interesting for our team to be kicking to a full forward again. So, looking forward to watching that play out. But, the Gabba, no knock on the Gabba, it's 30,000 strong, and it's a big change to go from that to the Friday night lights of the MCG, and with very forgiving Collingwood fans. So, it'll be an interesting one to play out.
He's got a sold-out stadium in front of the reigning premiers first up. Not a bad way to introduce yourself to one of the biggest clubs in the land. So very excited to see what McStay can bring to the table. But that's all for now from the latest. Let's head to our season previews for 2023. And we always like delving into these to see what we can come up with. And of course, after we get our thoughts, get ready for a big Ask Pies Nation segment later on in the show. But we'll begin with our opinions on what to expect coming into the year. And as we always typically do, our Copeland Trophy winner for 2023, boys.
I've gone with Jordan De Goey, gents. All the signs are there. We have had this in the previous years where the hype around Geordie has been there, but it hasn't quite played out the way we'd want it to, whether it be dips in form or more predominantly injury. But all the signs, all the talks there that he's fit and firing. It's the best he's ever looked. So, surely that means Geordie's due for a big year. But no, I hope for our sake and Geordie's sake that he can just get through 2023 unscathed injury-wise and hope that his form stays up. The Copeland is probably a bit of a far stretch, but I was trying to be a little bit out of the box.
No,
Jordan to go for my Copeland.
That's a great start, Marcus.
Well, I've got him finishing in the top 5 in the Brownlow, so I can't really go against the Goey, but I think Crispy is really in for another huge year. It's an obvious choice because of his recent success, but he is at the peak of his powers, and I think he could go to another level. Look out for Josh Dacos as well this year. I reckon he just might even lift that little bit more. Nico, who have you got?
Great call on Josh Dacos too. We'll get to that a bit later on. I went to the man we've been talking about for 5 minutes of this show, Darcy Moore. I think he wins the Copeland Trophy. I think he earns his second All-Australian jersey as well. This man had a terrific 2022 campaign and almost flew under the radar in the sense that, the talk was on our performance as a team and of course, we needed to highlight that. But, Darcy continued to lead the way before he even took the captaincy. But I think he stands out in the back line that's going to be tested throughout the year. He'll be the one that stands up for mine, that can take the charge and he'll stand out a lot more because of it. He'll only get better as a captain, still in the peak of his powers as we've mentioned. And I think that will result in him winning the Copeland.
Sounds like you've written the fairy tale D. Moore article. Ready
Only
to go
thing is a
the
premiership
end
now.
of the
Premiership
year.
captain.
Wow,
That's what we need.
And the blonde hair will do everything in his favour to win a few votes when maybe he
100%.
shouldn't as well.
I might see him start polling Brownlow votes too, the way he's going. So keep an eye out for Darcy Moore. Most goals. Very interested about this one.
I went with the man we were just talking about before, Nico. Dan McStay. I think just the amount of ball he's going to be fed, it's going to be hard for him not to kick our most goals. I mean, you look at previous years, Checkers has been that guy because he's been our main target going forward. So by default, I think, Dan McStay's the very safe option for mine. Marcus?
Oh, yeah, I'm not going to go with that. I'm going to go with Jamie Elliott. Huge smoky.
Okay.
Huge smoky. I think
Yeah.
this could be Billy's last big year before he starts to hit that real twilight phase of his career if he's not already there. But just off the back of last year, just really good Jamie Elliott energy coming into season 2023.
Nice call. And I think, 12, 13 months ago, he picked up an early injury and, it was concerns about if he could get back on the park on a consistent
quick
level again.
recovery from
It was
memory.
very quick. And since then, he's just taken the footy world by storm. It's just been a phenomenal year for him. So hopefully another one coming up for Jamie. I went Dan McStay too, but my catch is that it'll be a low number of goals for Dan McStay, and that won't be performance-based. I think it's just because we're going to have a lot of contributors around that forward 50 and even our midfielders. We saw in the practice matches, Tay goes up, kicks a couple of goals. Jordan De Goey bursting from the midfield. He's going to play that half-forward role at times throughout games as well. He's going to contribute. You've still got Mychek, Jack Ginnivan when he comes back. Bobby Hill, he's going to get on the scoreboard. Again, your man Jamie Elliott. They're all going to contribute in similar ways they did last year. And I feel like while McStay will still be the man inside forward 50 and the main target, don't be surprised if it's going to be a case of a lot of front and centre work, a lot of palming off, a lot of goal assists from everyone in that forward 50.
And what does that remind us of when we think spread of goal kickers?
Swoop squad.
Well, 2018,
Yep.
straight away.
Yeah.
I'd rather have that than a very concentrated scoring list because I think one injury and then all of a sudden that can be very much upset. So with those big fellas rolling through the forward line too, I'm really excited. I'd love to see maybe 8, 9 guys kick 20-plus goals. I think that's a really good sign of a functioning forward line.
Absolutely.
Jack, who's it a big year for at Collingwood?
Well, this might be a bit of an obvious one, but I've gone with Nick Dacos,
Okay.
Nico. Now, Nick Dacos, I've said this before on the podcast, I didn't subscribe to the hype pre-Nick Dacos 2022 by pure fact that there's so many top draft picks that we've seen over the years that have just wilted away into nothingness because of the pressure maybe. So I didn't subscribe to it. And then I watched the bloke play footy for a season and now I'm genuinely convinced he is God. So he's going to have to back that up again this year, which is a huge, it'll be a huge accomplishment if he can achieve it. He's gonna get a lot of attention this year. We've already seen twice against Sydney last year. Already in the practice games this year, he's been tagged. So no doubt that's going to happen quite a lot over season 2023. So I've got no doubt in his capability that he will rise to the occasion and step up to the plate. But it's going to be a big year for Nick figuring out sort of his next level as a player. I know that sounds ridiculous to say for a second-year player, but this is Nick Dacos, again, God that we're talking about. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he goes about it, Marcus.
Yeah, well, I'm completely in agreement because there's so many second-year Blues that we do see. I mean, looking back in my mind, Sam Walsh is a guy who comes to mind that didn't go on that trajectory of having this huge first year and just not getting any attention, and then was just able to build and build and build. And I think Nick, even though he'll be wearing a lot of tags, has the maturity to make sure that he doesn't take he won't want to plateau. This kid is just so keen to get better every single time you hear him. So I've got no doubt that he will. I'm going with his brother. I think that Josh has had an incredible rise over the last few seasons, but this year is his to really put himself in that top 3 in the Copeland Trophy, potentially taking it out. I want to see him going through the guts a little bit more and just being a little bit more damaging through the middle. Obviously, he's playing on that wing, but just seeing him get up and down, cover the ground better than he ever has in the last couple of seasons, I think he's in for an absolutely huge season, Nico.
I've gone incredibly left field here. Aiden Begg is the one that I'm looking at for this year. Now, not a make or break here. I think this will be his second full season. Of course, came midway through the 2021 year and came in injured as well. For those that Can't remember Aiden Begg. 3 games for us last year. Made his debut in round 7 against the Suns, played Richmond and the Bulldogs, and didn't appear after that Dogs loss, and we just went on that run, and I guess wasn't required. Now, he was someone we brought in after Grundy went down early as sort of a little quick fix, and maybe potentially someone we could see what they've got at the AFL level. It was clear he wasn't ready yet. Simple as that. But I think now, coming into 2023, he's had some good VFL form, averages 15 hitouts across his games in the VFL season. He hasn't kicked a goal yet, might drift around the ground. I think without Grundy and knowing that Cameron's going to take a bulk of the work, I know there's a lot of tools that's going to likely be in that best 22, but it's a big year for Aiden Begg because I think that if he can be the man in the VFL, be that ruckman. I know he's only 197 centimetres, which does concern me a touch, but nonetheless, if he's someone that can get a good year of development into him, he goes injury-free, he takes the mantle, he's able to go up forward and kick a few goals. I reckon he's going to start putting some pressure to get himself back in that senior side. He's got Oscar Steen coming in, someone that's younger, someone that's taller, someone that's going to compete with him and play that competitive opponent role for him in the VFL. And I think that ruck position is a temporary fix right now. Obviously, Darcy Cameron will take the role. Mason Cox won't be there forever. We know he's in his 30s now. We need that next person to stand up. And he came into the Collingwood Football Club with Brodie Grundy, Max Lynch and Darcy Cameron. Now, 2 of them are gone. This is his chance, I think, to really step up.
Yeah, there's going to be opportunity for him. How much? I'm not too sure. I think it relies on health, probably rather than form. But he's going to need at least another season or 2 to really bulk up. Some early signs of some more meat on the bone, Jack, from some of the footage I've seen, although scarce. But do you think he makes any sort of influence on the season this year?
I think he's got to be ready for sure, as you just mentioned, Marcus. If a Touchwood, hopefully Darcy and Mason don't get hurt, but if they do, really he is next in line straight away. Even if he, for whatever reason, something was to happen between now and Friday night, he would be the one to come up. So he's got a bit of responsibility there, and the hope is that when and if he does get that opportunity, that he can grab it with both hands and drive it forward. But it'll be one to watch for sure.
And it's funny because AFL.com did an article recently on every club's most important player, and the one they had for Collingwood was Darcy Cameron, I guess for the similar reasons in terms of the ruck depth. So, be keeping a close eye on Aiden in the VFL reports each week. Most influential recruit this year?
I've gone with Tom Mitchell, Nico. I don't think he's going to be most influential. I don't think he's going to go out there and win another Brownlow. I mean, it'd be great if he did. But I think he's that missing link in our midfield that we've spoken about for so long, that someone to help out Taylor Adams on the inside and feed it to the blokes like Jordan De Goey and co running on the outside. So I think he's going to play a subtle but very influential role for the Pies this year, Marcus.
Look, I could go with him. He's the obvious candidate. I agree. But just to talk a little bit more about the Pies, influential, wrong word, but I just want to come back to the importance of Billy Frampton just being on the park this season, because if he goes down with Charlie Dean out of the side for the entire season, is that correct? Yeah. That is a gaping hole. It's almost as big as Darcy in the ruck going down, and all of a sudden it just has this huge gaping hole in the list. Now we have depth through the midfield, we have plenty of flankers, but these big guys, like you lose a good one and it really exposes you. And we felt last season that Howie and Nathan Murphy having to play taller than they actually could play if they were having their first choice opponent was putting a lot of strain on that defence, and we still really stood up quite well. So I think if he can just be that big brick back there, Billy Frampton, and just punch the ball as soon as it comes down there and get it out of bounds, he could have a huge influence on this side this year.
That's a great call. And again, we spoke about Billy's importance last week and the fact that, we think he's going to have to play a lot of games this year purely for the fact that, he's 200 plus centimetres. So, hopefully
big body.
He's got an influence there. I went with Bobby Hill, and I was so excited about him coming in at the end of last year when we were able to recruit him. He's someone that's wanted to come to Melbourne for, the last couple of years. He's got his wish. He's playing for the Pies. And we saw little spurts of it during the practice matches that, injecting his pace into the front half will really complement our game style. And I think he kicks 25 goals plus this year, which will be a career high for him. Hasn't really had that opportunity at GWS. He can come in, play that small forward role. He's got 2-3 weeks without Ginnivan in that side. Elliott, of course, will contribute and potentially a few other small forwards like McCreary, but I think there's a great chance for him to really step up. Showed a big bright light to Melbourne what he's got in that forward 50 and, potentially have a big influence in front of the big sticks.
And he's unpredictable,
Yeah.
like Ginnivan, and that's the thing that we've missed beyond a tall forward is smaller guys who are creative and keep the defenders thinking. So Bobby Hill, Anzac Day medal, has got a nice ring to it.
I'll just
That's
note
good.
that down. That's for sure. Another good thing about Bobby is, and I was reading this early in the year, that there was a potential for him to play some midfield time this year, which I think could really help develop his own personal game. He's someone that averages really high amounts in score involvements and pressure acts. So again, not only complementing the game style, but the fact that, he may have a bit more of an impact further up the ground as well with those little traits, again, could take his game to the next level, which just sounds so exciting when you hear it. So let's hope Bobby can be a big success at the Pies. Let's predict our first 6 games. Now, we're just looking for, I guess, a record here, not win-loss, but you can go into as much or as little detail as you want. We've got Geelong, Port Adelaide, Richmond, Brisbane, St Kilda, and Essendon as our first 6 matches of the year, Jack.
Yeah, well, 6-0 would be lovely, Nico, but unfortunately, I don't live in fantasy land. Look, I think I'd take our same start from last year. I really would. I think 3-3 would be acceptable and build from that because it really is a tough start to the year. Facing the reigning premiers straight up and then Port Adelaide, who are no easy beats at home, which helps. So probably start favourites there, but then Richmond again. A lot's been said about their off-season trades and gets and whatnot, and Dusty's had a big off-season, and it's all happening for them. So that they will be a tough side to come up against, and then obviously you got St Kilda on neutral territory in Adelaide Oval. Anything can sort of happen there, but I really think I'd be happy. I'm conservative, but 3-3 would be my pass mark, Marcus.
Thanks, Jack. I think we go 4-2 with losses to the Cats and potentially the Lions. St Kilda a danger game. Just one of those ones where you should win by...
Especially in Adelaide.
5 or 6 goals, but then we end up making it closer than we need to. But I think we come out of the first 6 rounds 4-2, Nick.
I agree with both of you. I think we go 4-2, but I think 3-3 is the pass mark for mine. Cats incredibly strong. They're going to be tough to beat first up, and I'm happy to concede that would be one that we may drop to start. We usually do drop the first round anyway. We sort of bounce back after that. Power at home, Saints and Bombers, I think should be wins, but I think Richmond will be the one we lose to and not Brisbane, and I know that might sound very interesting. I think Richmond finished in the top 4 this year. I know Mick Molehouse said that they weren't going to finish in the 8, so by virtue of last year, after tipping Essendon to win the flag, Richmond are probably going to win it too, the way it's going. But Lynch and Presti expecting to come back by the time we play them. I think that's going to be a tough matchup. But Brisbane, I'm a little bit more optimistic about that one, and it's just a funny feeling I got. Haven't beaten them in Queensland the last 3 games, but we saw the game we played against them last year. We definitely stacked up to them, and look, again, very difficult to play them up there, but something tells me that we're usually an okay interstate side, and we might have their measure in that one. But again, very optimistic view. 4-2 is my call. 3-3 is the pass mark. So we'll see how we go from there. Final question, boys. Final ladder position. This one will be a very tough one to pick, I assume.
It will be. I feel like the top 8 is very wide open this year. I feel like there's probably a top 12, all of which could play finals. So it's a tough one to pick. Often in footy, from my point of view, you obviously have to exclude uprisings like Melbourne and Richmond's in that 2017, 2021 period. But you usually get 10% better or 10% worse. And unfortunately for us, 10% better means we stay in the top 4, and that's fantastic. But 10% worse means we're fighting for the last couple spots in the top 8. So, yeah, my expectations, I feel like a lot of the commentary around it, Nico, has been very heavy one way or the other. Collingwood are going to be up there winning the flag this year, or Collingwood are going to fall away and they're going to finish bottom 4. Yeah. So I really would just be happy to make finals again and be there. So I've predicted us to finish 6th by virtue of the fact I think there's a lot of top quality sides that will be above us. But yes, 6th with hopefully a few less heart attacks this year would be nice, Marcus.
Look, there's no doubt that the way we won so many close matches, it wasn't chance when you put that many together. So can we find that ability to just tick and tick and tick and make sure that we finish top 4? I think we can. I think we finish second potentially this year
Ooh,
by the end of the home and away. But were
lovely.
you asking for a post-finals
No,
result
no,
or
just home and away.
Yeah,
So
no,
perfect.
I'm really, really looking forward to seeing how this team goes this year.
I've obviously got us finishing 6th, but winning 4 games and going on to win our 6th flag. So
Obviously.
Makes sense. I can't remember, but there was an analyst that also predicted us to finish second this year. But I'm going to have to track back. I'm not exactly sure. Could
Must
be
have been
Bucks,
listening to
knowing
me.
us. Exactly right. I went 5 to 6. 5 to 6 is my ladder position. I couldn't split the two. A lot of people have predicted us to finish in that bottom half of the 8, and I think that's accurate. Similar call to what you make, Jack, in the sense that, can we replicate it? We can, realistically. I don't know, because there are a few sides that have topped up pretty well this year, and the expectation is that they should step up. Richmond being one of those teams. I believe there's a few others in that mark. I'm not going to mention one that I think might be there, but anyway, we'll keep going. But the key will be those first 6 games, in my opinion. I know that's very cliche to say, and that, anything can happen, but genuinely in this case, I think those first 6 games, considering how difficult they are, will be the key to where we go. If we have a poor start, are we able to recover and get ourselves out of a slump, or is it, going to be too difficult to find our way out of it? Injuries will play a big role, of course, in that. It's still a bit of an unknown. I mean, last year was an incredible unknown. We were having a new coach coming in, completely different game style, a couple of new bits of personnel on and off field, and we were really just ready for anything that was going to happen, and we saw what unfolded in 2022. There is a tinge of that unknown factor coming into it, not as big as it was last year, but it'd be hard to tell. So I think those first 6 weeks will play key, but in the end, I think 5th to 6th is a pretty accurate reading, from my opinion, of where we'll finish. Just before we wrap up this segment, news just coming through, I should say. Jeremy Howe has signed a 1-year contract extension that will keep him at the club till 2024, which is fantastic. We were just talking about our backline and how important it was to have some stability there, and Jezza staying on, hopefully continuing to reach the heights he has while being in the black and white for the last little period, will continue for at least the next year and a half.
Sensational news, and let's hope that he plays all of those matches and takes a few more hangers, and maybe that looming Mark of the Year award, Jack, is the reason for that extension.
He's been robbed about 3 or 4
Exactly
years,
right.
so yeah, he's due for sure.
They were our opinions. We'll get yours right after this quick little break on the Pies Nation podcast. This halftime break is brought to you by Liquorland. Footy is back, and Liquorland have all your drinks needs for when the siren calls. And this Thursday to Sunday, to kick off the season, Liquorland again offering $2 express delivery when you shop online at liquorland.com.au. That is the perfect lead-in to a big 2023 campaign.
Absolutely, it is, Nico. And how convenient is that? You could be at the footy and then you could have your drinks delivered at your door when you're ready to go home. So very convenient by Liquorland.
Doesn't get much better than that, Jack, does it? Express delivery available in Victoria, New South Wales and Queensland. Not available in all postcodes. View full T's and C's and the latest drink specials at liquorland.com.au. Liquorland, from the land you love. Please drink responsibly. Welcome back to the Pies Nation podcast, where the pies are hot and the drinks are cold. We're going to head straight to one of our favourite segments here on the pod, Ask Pies Nation. Make sure you get around us, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. I'll keep reeling off all the social media pages that we might make an appearance on, so be sure to keep up to date with all of those social media pages to get involved in our Ask Pies Nation segment each week. Lukey was onto it very quickly following the success of last week, which is great. His question to the faithful was, which player on our list do you think could genuinely be a surprise packet/selection and make a big impact across the season? And there was some terrific answers. So we thank everyone for getting involved, as always, on Ask Pies Nation. So without further ado, let's get underway with Margaret Jones on Twitter. With the input of Tom Mitchell, will allow Jordan to go to another level. And we're talking about that with your recruit of the year, Jack, Tommy Mitchell. And I think we already saw it in that Hawks practice match. That definitely looks like that will happen again this year.
Yeah, absolutely. He's the missing link, Nico. And hopefully, that comes to fruition.
Absolutely. This one's an interesting one from Gordon, Beat Gordon on Twitter. Maybe not immediately, but throughout the second half of the year, Arlo Draper's going to have a spot in the best 22 locked down. Now, another sort of player that was, I guess, came into the system a couple of years ago, played a lot of VFL. I think he played just about every game in the VFL too. So, yeah, fascinating one to look out for. Arlo Draper, what are your thoughts on him potentially making a dent in the senior side?
Another tall who will potentially go across the
I have
halfback
to get
line.
exactly. He is a halfback was where what we drafted him as.
He came across from SA, I'm pretty sure,
Yep.
along with some other boys in that draft year. Does he get an opportunity again if it's not related to I think we have to have a few injuries, in fact, for him to break in. So I hope that's not an omen for the health of our defenders later in the season, Nico, but could be. You never know.
Huge raps on his preseason, though.
Yeah,
Apparently came
okay.
back fit and firing. So, yeah, should be interesting.
Couple of positives here for Reef McInnes. We've got Barry Kelly who says McInnes, if he can stay fit, he's ready to fire. And for the first time this year, our good mate Serge is back on the Ask Pies Nation. Great to hear from him. Serge, he goes, Reef McInnes, provided he stays injury-free, and expect Josh Carmichael to improve as well. We touched on McInnes last week after the Hawks practice match where, he was playing that deep forward role and potentially being used as a smaller tall. Not that that makes any sense, but nonetheless, someone that, can lead up and take a strong mark and impact the scoreboard. Maybe he gets a role as a sub this week.
Potentially, he could be one of those guys who comes on with a bit of X factor.
Yeah, absolutely. And Carmichael, a name mentioned in that one as well, Nico. I actually heard him on a different podcast throughout the week. He sort of spoke on coming in mid-season last year and having to adapt to the system that was Collingwood and not really knowing where he was in that. So I'm sure he would have benefited from another pre-season and getting used to our system and the way we're playing football and where he needs to be. So he will be one to watch for sure.
Xander Kuris on Twitter has echoed Marcus's sentiments from the recruit that with the most impact, Billy Frampton, to be the bargain of the trade period. Will allow Darcy Moore and Jeremy Howe to intercept more and have more impact in the back six. Interesting.
Agree.
Yep, spot on. So you must have been listening to you 10 minutes ago. Quickly got on the Twitter and he was there to stay. Matt on Twitter, pretty obvious selection, but McStay, I think, will be a shining example of what a new system can do to a player. Him being the number one target up forward will be vital, and as a bigger benefit, takes the pressure off Checkers a bit, so he won't have to play injured all year. Now, spoke about McStay and that article with Craig McRae and the fact that he's just trying to, remind him that he's the number one man. So, yeah, hopefully we can see a bit more of that, Matt. We've got Albie Pengart on Twitter. Tom Mitchell, without a doubt, ball winner in the engine room. Family ties and history would inspire him to follow his father's footsteps, making a huge impact. Love of game and club to feel his hard work, which, yeah.
Love that.
Although his dad did come across to Collingwood, big contract, I don't know if you remember, and then played about a year and got injured, and that was it.
That was it?
I went over to Carlton, yep.
Okay.
So hopefully not the entire career of his father, but we'll see how we go. Another one for Tom Mitchell here from Grant Tobin. Tom Mitchell will transform his game and ours. Clearance and clean hand specialist. Watch Degoe thrive as he hunts the pack, and the two form silent communication markers. That's a great one.
Bluetooth
Grant.
connection.
That's it. Graham Teasdale. I think Finn McRae can have a big impact when he gets some clear sailing. What's your thoughts on Finn McRae? He was someone a lot of fans had called to go into the side last year. Didn't really have that opportunity, and again, was another one that spent a lot of his time in the VFL. He only hit the 20-plus disposal marker on one occasion in that VFL season last year. Is he at a bit of a crossroads this early? Is that difficult to say?
I fear for Finn. I do. It might be premature, but I think the running capacity, while it's there, he just doesn't have that power, and the disposal needs to improve. And we've talked about the depth of our midfield, so poor guy couldn't have picked a worse time to be at Collingwood as a young player when you've got so many experienced heads around you. Do you see it differently, Jack? Or?
Yeah, absolutely, Marcus. It's a tough side to break into for sure. I think for Finn, last year's his biggest issue was just, I obviously don't know him, but maybe breaking that mental barrier from the VFL to the AFL and making that massive jump up, because it is a completely different brand of football. Because from all reports, as Nick just touched on, he's killing it in the VFL. Fans are saying we need to get him in, in, and then he sort of didn't. I think deer in headlights is perhaps a bit too harsh, and he came in at difficult times. Last year, he came in round 23 against Carlton in what ended up being our biggest home and away game of the season. So, yeah, maybe it's going to be a tough side for him to break into, but breaking into it early for Finn will be big for his development. But I tend to agree with you, Marcus. I do fear for Finn McRae this year.
I should clarify, I said under 20 disposals. Only 4 games this year where he's had under 20 disposals. He's had a lot of high possession games. It's just about, I guess, that impact in that midfield, I guess, is the query. So we'll see how he goes with that one. A few more here for Ask Pies Nation. Some great ones. Karen Maxwell, you must be with the fans here, Marcus, because they all seem to be agreeing with you. I'm tipping that Josh Dacos will have a true breakout year. He's now reaching his prime years, had a great year in 2022, but in 2023, 1 year older, and with one more preseason under his belt, he will mark his stamp and his brother will help him do so.
Well, when he feeds him the ball all the time, it's like the first thing that comes back to my mind was that kick across the ground last year, and then Josh just rammed it home from outside 50. Looking forward to plenty more of those moments this year, Nick.
Ultimate greatness, a huge fan of Bo and Ed Allen. Both are absolute bulls and have super underrated disposal by foot. Bo looks so good this preseason and being amongst a lot of play, if he can read the contest and find the ball more. I've been saying this a lot, but I see some Swanee in him.
Don't mind that.
McCreary. Well, on field, not a bad idea.
Needs some more tats, for sure.
He's got a couple, hasn't he?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
He's building. He's building.
Stickers on the leg.
Another one, another praise here for Ed Allen by Jimmy on Twitter. Ed Allen looks like he could be a great get, speed, and he's big. Some good VFL games might see him get a gig sooner than expected. Ed Allen, there's been a lot of raps about him. He was one when he came to the club that I think was the most hyped. He was a bit of a drifter in the draft, of course, you know, the son of Ben Allen, Hawks premiership player, I believe.
Ah, right.
So ineligible for father-son because he hadn't played 100 at any of these clubs of Hall and Freo. But, you know, someone that, you know, has got good speed on him and apparently he's very, very versatile player. So you can see why there's been a lot of hype around him. He did play limited footy last year in the Waffle, so...
Yeah, I think he is interesting. He's similar height and perhaps build to where Reef is now. And Reef came into the system as a big-bodied midfielder who's now a bit of a third come fourth tall forward. So Ed Allen, one to keep an eye out on for sure.
There's a couple more here to wrap up. Bull Abdul, who was on last week, he's gone on twice in a row. I said last season I thought Josh Dacos would improve with the spotlight moving to his brother. Now that Nick has confirmed his credentials, I believe that Josh will go to another level again. So a lot of Josh Dacos love here on Ask Pies Nation. Another fascinating one here from Brendan Mimedi. Billy Frampton will be a fan favourite. I think he can add a little grunt to our team. Therefore, which will be interesting to see, Darcy Moore to possibly have a run in the ruck when called upon. Wow,
I would have
that is
thought
a big call from Brendan.
I would have thought Frampton, if anyone, to go into the ruck in the D50. Just leave Darcy Moore out of it.
Yeah.
For
I hope we don't have to, as good of as a.
If we're that desperate.
Yeah,
I don't think I've
there's
ever
trouble
seen
if
him.
Darcy Moore's in the ruck.
Can you guys recall Darcy Moore in the ruck?
I don't think I've ever seen him in the ruck.
Yeah.
No.
Don't start now.
2 more to wrap up. Fools on Twitter. Nathan Murphy. Media continue to not put him in mock teams and predicted lineups, even though he's been outstanding since his return to the team halfway through last year. Bit of a forgotten one, Murph. We know he could play tall. We saw it last year. If Frampton isn't looking the goods early, we know we can rely on him. But maybe if he's able to get into the side while Frampton's playing, we might be able to see him, I guess, have a bit more influence. Not that he wasn't already, but if he doesn't have to play as a key tall, then we could see him be dangerous around other parts of the backline.
I can see him starting on the bench this year, even with Bruz in the team. I think it'll, again, rely on the opposition and how much we need that type of player in, but big raps on Murph, and he deserves his spot.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think I'd go as far to say as Nathan Murphy has locked in his spot for round 1 for mine, just based on the year that he had last year, playing a role that was not necessarily out of his control, but certainly one that we would prefer him not to play. So with big bodies like Frampton and Darcy Moore and Jeremy Howe down there now to help him out, he'll no doubt benefit from actually playing on someone his own size.
Yeah.
And to finish off, Ask Pies Nation, Laurie Holden on Twitter. This will be the second coming of Mason Special Teams Cox.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think this could be Mace's biggest year. I don't know why, but when I watched him get around the ground, I know you're critical of his tap work, Nick, and that could potentially use a tune-up, of course, the contested marking. But I think that he's at that point in his career. This would be year 6 or 7, do we reckon? Maybe even year
This
8?
is 8, year 8.
Year 8.
Yeah.
We know ruckmen take a lot of time to come into their own, and I just feel like that his understanding of where to be around the ground is going to be as good as it ever could be over the next season or two. So I'm very, very excited for a big year from Coxie.
Yeah.
Do you agree?
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more, Nico.
Well done, Jack. Ask Pies Nation, that is it for another episode. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube is where you can find us. Be sure to get involved. Ask Pies Nation, at Pies Nation is where you can find all of those posts. And of course, we've got some big ones coming up with the Guess the Crowd segment coming back this year and a few other initiatives to stick around for in 2023 with the socials. Before we wrap up, Marcus, got some key changes in the rules department to look at in 2023. So before everyone has a crack at the umps, we can safely and surely know what's going on thanks to the one and only Marcus Callahan.
Well, being a Collingwood podcast, we will have a crack at the umps.
Of course we will.
regardless.
Yes, that's exactly right. I was optimistic there.
But just a few rule changes I wanted to gloss over because this will have implications for our analysis, boys, and those big moments in the post-match reviews. So first one we've got here is in relation to standing the mark. If I can just read this out. Players can no longer momentarily stand the mark after losing a marking contest or giving away a free kick and then leave the mark and or the protected area. Previously, a player standing the mark could back away and leave the protected area. So, like, what sort of impact do we see that having on the game, Nico?
Well, for our system, for one, because we did that quite a lot last year.
Love to back off.
Yep, absolutely. So, I guess the onus will just be on the player if we do lose a marking contest or give away a free kick to just get out of there straight away. Unless, of course, we're instructed to stand there, that's fine. But I expect, and we've already seen a bit of it in the practice matches this year, that we're going to continue to just back away from that protected area. I think we did give away a 50 from it once or twice in the practice match too against the Hawks.
Yeah,
So
Josh Dacos from memory gave away a couple, so a bit of confusion there.
yeah, absolutely. So hopefully we're just very quick to get out of there and continue to play on.
So is there an initial time period, do we think, gents? Because I remember watching the Hawthorn game, knowing that rule was in place, but still seeing players get away from the mark straight away. So if you initially act like you're going to be on the mark and then pull away, that'll be the free kick? Is that the understanding, Marcus?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Based on the article I'm reading here, is that you've got to be really clear about what you're doing, and if you're pretending to be in no man's land, shall we say, that's when the umps is going to blow the whistle. Okay. So players need to make a quick decision, that's going to be huge in games where particularly pressure is high and you just in the moment, and you particularly over the first month of footy. So I think we'll be talking about that quite a bit. Second rule that we wanted to have a bit of a chat about. Milking a 50-metre penalty on the mark, boys.
Ooh.
I think we all know what this means.
Yep.
You've got the free kick, and then you're faking the handball, and you're trying to sell some candy, and then off you go for your 85-metre penalty. I swear the umps need a measuring tape. But Nico, do you think this is something that players will tune up to pretty quickly?
All this says to me is that this was a way to bend the rules last year. The fact that you could fake the handball, hope that the player on the mark would take a step, and all of a sudden it's 50 metres. So they're just sort of fine-tuning that. I don't mind it. I mean, look, at the end of the day, the stand rule is there so that you can run around and play on and continue the game going forward. So all of a sudden, if they start to sort of, try and find little ways to get through, I mean, clever, that's for sure. But, at the end of the day, if you're going to be like that, focus more about actually trying to get the ball moving forward instead of forcing the opposition to go one way. Only a few special players can sell the dummy, Dids being one of them. I don't think anyone does it better.
Absolutely. Do you think the punishment fit the crime last season in terms of that big of a stuff up could cost you 50 metres, Jack? Have they made the right call this year?
I think with new rules like the stand rule, you're always going to have teething issues, and you're always going to have clubs exploiting new rules in any way that they can. I mean, it's only,
a game.
It's only natural, and they're trying to do their best to win within the rules of the game. So yeah, for sure. But I actually really like the idea of no dummy and no milking the 50. It's just a bit of common sense in there that after a year of teething, I mean, shout out Sam Doherty who did it that round 23, and it just absolutely infuriated me. And so yeah, I'm glad that's a rule for 2023.
Glad you brought that up, Jack. That's nice to know that despite that pain point, we knocked them out. Last one here, Nico, we just wanted to go through was the set shot on goal. So for the set shot, there has been the 15-second hurry up, and then again at 25 seconds for the 30-second shot on goal timer. 15 seconds is gone. They'll just get one indication at 25 seconds that they need to get a wriggle on. So I reckon this, for some of the big, tall forwards who like to take their time, throw the grass up in the air, have a look at themselves on the big screen, all that sort of thing. I'm being facetious, but it could be a moment late in the game once again where a player's just kind of lost track of time. I know they've got the 30 seconds on the big screen, but another one that they'll need to tune up if they want to kick a goal.
I wonder how many players are going to get caught by that the first few weeks of the season, because they might think, yeah, I got 2 whistles here. They hear the first one, and then by the time the second one goes, that's it.
There'll be a few.
Play on 100%.
Big forward, just
that's it.
Off with the fairies.
Sure, the last thing you're thinking about as you take a clunk 30 out on an angle is, quick, I better hurry up and not take my 30 seconds sort of thing. So it's one of those strange ones where they've just got to be extra switched on, I guess. And it's nice and tough on an Anzac Day when there's 95,000 people there screaming and you can't even hear yourself think.
No doubt. So, look, those were the 3 big ones. Nick, I think in terms of the interpretation of those deliberate, that will be the other hot topic as they try to speed the game up and players encouraged to kick inboard rather than towards the boundary line. But there's going to be some absolute shockers. Like these poor players sometimes, they're coming out of the D50 flat stick and you literally have half a second to put the ball on your boot or get pinned, and it's almost going to be the case of you're better off giving up territory and giving the ball away than getting tackled or trying to do something cute, Jacko.
Is there a world in which, and this is a bit ridiculous, but is there a world in which we go to like a basketball style format and last touch out of bounds? Like, what do you gents think of that?
I find it fascinating because at working at the Northern Footy Netball League, we're implementing that for games that don't have enough boundary umpires. Of course,
is there a shortage?
There's been a shortage for the last 24 months. COVID sort of took a big hit of umpires. So particularly with junior games and under 19s games, if there's no sufficient boundary umpires, then it's going to be a last touch rule. So I'll be fascinated to see if that does work and it's something that gets implemented at higher levels of football. So one to keep an eye on.
Well, potentially suits the rules of the game at this point in time, trying to speed it up, but you need your boundary umpires running up and down. It doesn't feel right otherwise.
Yeah. I mean, I just love the idea of a throw in your full forward area with dying set moments of a game.
That's true.
There's something out the snap pocket, so maybe they could throw ins for defensive and offensive 50s and then out of bounds last touch for the rest of the ground.
Potentially, that might be the way we go about it. But fascinating to see. Perfectly delivered as always, Marcus, with the rule changes. Fantastic stuff.
Thanks, Nico.
Beautiful. Before we wrap up, now, this is a big one because just in case you've heard us enough and you've seen us enough, you're going to get even more of that now because on Thursday night, selection night, you'll see us go live on Instagram each week as the teams drop, get the live reaction. So usually what would happen, we'd briefly have a 5-minute guessing game as to what the teams would be at the end of each episode. But what we can do now is as the teams drop, of course, with the big games coming up, we'll be able to give that reaction, not just from us, but more importantly to fans. They'll be able to comment and engage as it's happening. And that will allow us to have a more analytical preview of the game to come and get us to talk tactics and matchups and our tips as well coming into it. Might be able to be a bit more accurate with the tips like we weren't last year, tipping 1-2 pointers every week. I'm not sure how often that occurred, but another great way to we want to get the fans involved, and we're really looking forward to seeing that take place throughout the year.
And importantly, gents, we have the Monday night recording of the pod this season, so the Thursday will actually allow us to have a bit of a chat about those injury list updates that come on the Tuesday night.
Usually, yep.
So we unfortunately won't have the Monday recording ready for that, but we will have the Thursday. So looking forward to that, Nick.
Absolutely. And with the Monday, I guess, we have a lot of Sunday games this year. It's going to be perfect for us to really delve into what took place during the weekend's action and giving you, the fans, the best possible analysis, access and laughs that we possibly can, Jack.
Yeah, absolutely, Nico. Bigger and better things this year for the Pies Nation pod in 2023. Can't wait to be a part of it.
Merch on the way as well. Not ones that look like this from 20-odd years ago, but keep an eye on that as well. But Until then, we'll catch you on Thursday night during our live Instagram. Otherwise, you'll see us again in studio here when we defeat Geelong by 6 goals.
Nico, I just wanted to ask quickly, can we just get the story on that
This top.
magnificent piece of merchandise? How old were you when you got it? Did you get it for Christmas? What was the situation?
So, well, I can run through it very briefly. I don't know if Prime still exists.
I've got
so
all night.
They're getting a free shout out here, sure. No, this was actually my late father's top from quite a few years ago. It's a late 90s piece. Of course, we still had the Collingwood flag ahead of the Australian flag, which we had to change early 2000s because by law, any Australian flag had to be first.
Good
and
memory.
foremost.
I forgot
So,
all about that.
Therefore, that's the real old logo. But yeah, I just remembered that it was still in my cupboard from
It's a
all
true
those
relic.
years
I tell you
ago.
what, I thought when I first came into the studio tonight, it was like a Juventus top, and it wouldn't have surprised me, Nico, because I know you love your soccer. But no, it's a Pies relic, and it's looking fantastic.
No, so I thought, we're on video form now. We might as well get all the old memorabilia out. So
I still
might as
haven't got the
well.
memo there, boys. So I'll be coming once that merch arrives.
Absolutely sounds like a plan. But yep, hopefully, if this is the stuff you like, then, maybe it might incline us to do a bit of shopping around and seeing what type of new gear we can get on. But our merch coming soon as well, so keep an eye on that too. But until then, Marcus, Jack, thanks as always for tuning in. Big Friday night coming up, boys. So really excited to go through it in more detail on Thursday. Till then, I've been your host, Nicholas Sacco. You've been listening to the Pies Nation podcast, where the pies are hot and the drinks are cold. Thanks for listening to the Pies Nation podcast, and thanks to Liquorland, who are proud partners of the show. Liquorland, proud partners of the Pies Nation podcast for another season of footy. Footy is back, and Liquorland have all your drink needs for when the siren calls. Liquorland, from the land you love. Please drink responsibly.